All right, good evening. It is June 17th, 2024. The time is 5 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Argyle AISD Board of Trustees. At this time, we'll determine if a quorum is present.
Leona McDade, present.
Josh Western, present.
Rich McDowell, present.
Leonardo, present.
Matt Slayton, present.
Craig Hawksworth.
So now I say I'm Sladen present. We do have a quorum established. The time is 5:01 p.m. and we will adjourn to executive session. Thank you all. good evening. The time is 6:02 p.m. We have returned from executive session. This time we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Friends are all on summer vacation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right. This time we'll have a moment of prayer.
Bow your heads with me, please. Father, may the students and staff of Argyle ISD experience your love through the examples set by each other, by the administration, by the board, and by this community. Lord, please release the truth in this school. Help students to rightly discern truth from falsehood with regard to your love and daily experiences. I pray blessings on each of these trustees. Please guide us to make decisions in the best interest of all students. Father, may your will be done at these proceedings and all future board meetings. Amen.
Amen.
All right, this time we'll have public forum. We have one person signed up tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and read my spiel. Everyone, sit back. This
Still
is
reading it?
yes, I am. Here we go. All right, we'll now move into the public forum portion of tonight's meeting. Please note that board policy requires speakers to sign up in person before the meeting is called to order. During this portion of the meeting, board members will listen to comments, but as the designated spokesperson, only the president may respond to the speaker if needed and refer concerns to the appropriate administrator. Speakers can comment on agenda items, but trustees will not be able to discuss the items until they are before the board during the meeting. Board Policy BED Local provides the presiding officer the ability to adjust the time allotted per speaker for effective meeting management. Pursuant to that policy, an individual's comments to the board at tonight's meeting shall not exceed 5 minutes. The presiding officer may reduce the allotted time for each individual to speak to no less than 1 minute for effective meeting management. Speakers are not allowed to receive time for other individuals. Tonight, each speaker will receive 5 minutes. Specific complaints about individual district personnel are to be processed through the district's grievance policies as set out in district policies DBA, FNG, and/or GF. Speakers are not permitted to refer to individual students or employees by name during the public comment period. Additionally, if you have a pending grievance that may come before the board in a level 3 hearing, please refrain from addressing the topic of your grievance except through the grievance process. Per board policy BED and board's operating procedures, the board will not allow disruption of the board meeting by members of the public. If, after one warning from the presiding officer, any person continues to disrupt the meeting by words or actions, the person will be removed from the meeting. All right, here we go. All right, tonight, Estella Spiegelberg. Good evening.
Evening. It's not even evening, is it?
Wow.
It's hard to say that when the
We've
sun
been
is
here a
out.
couple hours, we'll say.
Sun stays out a long time these
Yeah.
days. So.
All right, it's your time.
Hi, so I wanted to, there was 2 issues that I wanted to discuss. One is the traffic routes for JRE. It was something that I had brought up a year ago. And when I spoke to someone from the Belmont board, they said that they could only discuss in their meetings what the school district had brought up, and they had not brought up traffic patterns. And by my estimation, there's about 400 students expected to come in from the Ridge into Harvest through 2 side streets, through 2 small roads, 19th and 17th Street, both of which allow public parking, and it's already very hard for cars coming from 2 different directions to go down them. And they did not hear anything about traffic going through those side streets when the school district made their presentation. So now they have to wait until there are complaints from the public, which wouldn't happen until school is in session in August. They wouldn't meet again until September. And we could be dealing with very big traffic issues that would affect drop-off and pickup at JRE if that's not addressed before school starts. So I'm hoping that you guys are working on that and that you will be going to the Belmont Water District with some recommendations as to how they should route traffic until Cleveland Gibbs is complete. So that's one piece. And then the second piece is we still don't have any financials for your 10-year strategic plan. And you are asking for a raise for teachers, which I am in complete agreement with. They deserve it. They deserve that money. However, the resolution that you guys posted on the website shows that it would only guarantee compensation for the first year. And it doesn't say anything about removing that tax if and when the state does start to reimburse the school the way that it should be for the students. And those two things would mean that if you do need money for your 10-year strategic plan for the 2-year high school split, you could in essence take from this tax money that you would be advertising as money for raises for teachers. So it's something that the optics would not look good if you don't either have that financial information, along with maybe changing the language in the resolution if it truly is meant to be something that's meant to compensate teachers, that money. So those are the two things that I wanted to bring up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the consent items. Pull up donations, please. All right, for our June 2024 donations, AABC, donation number 34, $5,100 for a football sled. AABC, donation number 35, $1,000 for girls soccer athletic character development curriculum subscription. AABC number 36, $3,680.64 for football gloves. AABC, donation number 37, $3,160 for Smart Speed Plus All Sports. AABC, donation number 38, $8,400 for BB shooting machine. Donation from Nick Hobby for $7,124 for JRE Progress Learning online program for practice and remediation K through 5 students in math, science, social studies, and reading. Total June donations, $28,464.64. Does anyone have any questions on any of the consent items? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Matthew Slayton, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Leanne Artho with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, moving on down to construction. This is Liz going to the restroom, or?
Actually, no.
No.
The first one, I think, is the bond update.
Want to do the bond update
Yes,
first?
please.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it's
Did I
okay.
miss that?
It's the first.
It's not an attachment.
There's no.
There was. It's showing on mine. Hold on.
Okay,
It got put in as, it didn't get put in as public, so one moment.
that would be my mistake.
It's all right. We will fix it real quick. This
That would be
isn't.
You want to retract your shame you tried to throw at me?
So while
Okay,
she's
let's
looking-
go on with the JRE, and can you share it with him, please?
Yes.
Because board book's locked.
Sorry, Liz.
We'll let him do that, and then she'll share that with Christopher. Yeah, Edwin, show me yours.
No, Mr. Matthew Slayton, shame.
All right, we'll start with Jane Russman update for you. We have some aerial photos here from last week. Got more lawn that's been going in as the rains allow them to cut the sod, which comes from North Texas and Oklahoma. So we're not complete yet, but we continue to work on it. It's every chance we get to get deliveries. Can you
Isn't
adjust
she
that
beautiful?
where it's- Yeah. Thought that one looked a little strange.
Far left. Yeah, there you go.
Much better, thank you. So here's the second aerial. As you can see, the parking lot's going through the process of being cleaned up. They actually began painting fire lanes and striping last, I believe, Thursday, Friday. So looks much different already than in this photo. Our street signage is all up other than our school zone flashers, and those are in the warehouse ready to come out. And here they just did a direct overall directly above, so you can kind of see everything in a bird's eye view. So I think primarily what to focus on here is the courtyard. You can see how well defined it's becoming. They actually just lack a couple of plants that do go in there, not grass, and the turf. And that's really all they lack in that courtyard. Here's some of our interior photos as they wrap up. They're getting all the final finishes installed. So here you're looking at the large wall as you walk in from the front. This photo is actually taken from the library towards the front entrance. And so this is a mural that the architect came up with using different shapes and colors, since we are using color and shapes in this school. So it's a combination of paint and acoustical panels. So it gives it a little bit of a 3D effect. They used the same photo twice. On the outside, they're continuing with the canopy installation. Those are in progress now, so we won't be putting up canopies after school starts like we did on the last one. Parking lot striping is ongoing, and then just final clean of the site and interior. Here's some more interior photos. This is looking at the hallway from the cafeteria. So again, we've got some acoustical products you can see on the wall there. And this actually comes as a printed product. So these are just 4x4 squares. So you're not trying to put together the puzzle that you saw in the last one. Here's a photo of one of the completed hallways with the flooring. You see the colors and the shapes on the floor. And then they repeated the color and shapes in the ceiling. Again, those are an acoustical product there at each water fountain. So they kind of use that to define that in each hallway. Just additional interior photos. This is another photo in the library looking the other direction. And a milestone schedule. We're almost done. A couple more weeks. But I still can't get them to say certificate of occupancy in June, but we may have it next week. So all we lack is finishing. Punch list, final clean, training.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
The timeline on everything's exciting. So
Yes,
very, very fortunate.
we own the elevator.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the keys yet, but we own it. It's
That's
done,
great.
passed.
It's just fortunate the teachers will be able to get in on
Yes.
time. So
Our furniture deliveries are
And not-
scheduled
and
July
not
1st.
frantic.
yeah.
And then we'll move all their belongings, those that are moving from other campuses, on the 15th.
Yep.
So they should be able to get in there by the end of July if they want to come early and start setting up the rooms. I know that's important to them, and traditionally they never have much time, so they
Right.
should have enough time this time.
Thank you.
Looks great, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, you're back.
Is this gonna work with it? I don't know.
It's that one at the bottom right there.
Yes.
Bear with me for just 1 second.
It's actually at the bottom. I think I just saw it down there. It's actually at the bottom of the screen on the desktop. It looked like it was down there at the bottom of the
Yeah, just
desktop,
minimize that one.
right
Right, middle.
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 The two presentations that are already there, that's the regular board meetings slides.
No, open up that bond plan.
The bond
That one
plan.
goes with the bond sale.
Okay,
Here in
that's
just a
the
few
right one,
minutes. Sorry.
Wow.
I think the little Jeopardy comes in, right? So we need to get some music going. While he's working on.
I think you can
getting
start
his-
talking through it.
Yes, so this is just a recap of the 2017 bond program. And we just wanted to go back and go over the projects that were in the bond, because we are at the point now where we feel like we've completed all the projects, and we have final amounts on everything. Just highlighting what was done in that program. And then we also want to give the BOC a few minutes to go over some highlights of how they've worked on the program and what they're doing moving forward. So on the 2017 bond issue, we had 166 million authorization, right, 2017, sorry. And it was sold in 3 issues. And when we get the report up, I'll actually tell you what dates those were. But we had some projects in there. It was, let's see, west and south. We have this building that we're in, right, our admin building. We had the transportation center renovation, moving out the maintenance over there on the old metal buildings. We had the renovation of the 6th grade center. We had some renovations in Hilltop and in 377. We actually, when 377 was, the high school was still located at 377, we did classroom additions there. Oh, thank you. Yes, so we had the classroom additions at 377. Those were those 12 classrooms back there in the back. Oh, you're just testing me to see if I can remember all things right here, right?
You were doing good.
Phase 2 over here. So again, this was originally a middle school with phase 1. Phase 2 was built with 2017 bonds. There was quite a bit of technology in there. There were some one-to-one devices and some other infrastructure included, and then we had buses that we purchased along the way. And I believe I hit all the other highlights on there. So those were what were discussed in the bond program when we actually went out to the voters and had this authorized. So all of those have been completed. We did some additional projects along the way. We did some HVAC and lighting controls. That was throughout the district. Crisis alert system throughout the district. We did some irrigation upgrades here at this campus. At the high school actually on this location, to help with quite a few leaks. So it's a large acreage site, a lot of water going around, and a lot of places for those irrigation pipes to bust and water to continue run and bills to rack up. So we did some upgrades there to help with that. And then HVAC replacements. We're finishing up that this summer at Hilltop. They have the last of the replacements over there on those big units on top on their rooftop. One thing that I didn't mention on there, when we talked about the 6th grade center renovation, the original project didn't have the fire lane in it. We actually had to come back, and y'all know we put in like $1 million fire lane in there that was required. That wasn't in the original part, but we did have to complete that with that project. So here are the 3 issues that we talked about: September 17, June 19th, and October 2020. And I just want to point this out, because we talk about this a lot of times when we go out and we talk to our voters, and we have a bond campaign out there, that just because we're asking for authorization all at one moment in that vote doesn't mean you're going to issue and take all that debt on at one time. And so this is just kind of goes to that point. It was all authorized in 2017, but they were sold in 17, 19, and 20 as needed, as the capacity was there and as the projects were needed. We earned around $3.7 million in interest on this project, and at this point in time, we have just over $2.3 million remaining in unallocated bond funds that we feel like at this point in time we could say could be used for the 2022 bond program to help with those costs.
And that's because this is prior to legislation
Correct.
passing.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is correct. Do you have any questions over this point? Okay, then I'm going to invite Josh up. I'm going to let him talk to you about the Bond Oversight Committee and their part in this process and how they're moving forward.
Thanks, Ms. Stewart.
Sure.
Dr. Carpenter,
Hello.
members of the board, thanks for having me here tonight. Good to see you all. I wanted to give you guys a brief update on the BOC and its activities. As you guys know, I'm the co-chair of that committee, and we've got a great group of folks there. The BOC was founded after the passage of the 2017 bond. And we've been meeting now for over 7 years. That committee has changed some as we moved along, especially as we got into the 2022 bond, but largely it's been intact in serving the community. I was looking at this, and the BOC exists really for three primary things in my mind. Number one, there's a piece of education. You all get a regular education on what's going on in these projects. The community, however, doesn't have the same access always. It's a little more difficult to get your hands on it. And I think that BOC is a big part of getting information about the bond and the work going on, and that those community members can then disseminate that information to the people at large, the community at large. I think that's a big part. Number two, there is a function of accountability of what was passed and approved and paid for by the voters and what's actually executed. That's a format to provide accountability to the school district and its trustees in the process. And then number three is advice, and largely advice on best value, but also best practice. The BOC today and in its existence has been full of experts in the field, of a wide variety of people with some really good input, insight, experience, and they bring that to the bond process. We've got about 15 or so community members on the committee today. We meet about 6 times a year. We meet every other month or so. Some of the advantages of this committee, it's really a relaxed environment. You know, this setting is very formal, and I think often that's difficult to have a candid conversation. And on these projects, I think it is needed to have a candid conversation. I think that BOC provides a really healthy environment for candid conversation. One is it brings the talent that I think exists in the Argyle community to a centralized place where you can really get some very detailed expertise and input into these projects. And there's a regular cadence of communication. I think it takes a lot to get your mind wrapped around these projects. And the consistency of meeting on a regular basis and seeing these projects from start to finish, I think is a huge advantage of the BOC. So what are we doing? I think Ms. Stewart did a great job of showing the results of the 2017 bond, though the BOC may have had a very minor part in the success of that project. There were several occasions that were brought to my attention before I was on the committee, and then I experienced as I've been on the committee, that really steered the direction of a few decisions on that bond that really made a difference. As an example, the BOC was instrumental in encouraging the district to hire Jeff Cohen as a construction manager. I think that was a really good move. There was also some financial decisions where we brought a little bit of accountability to the contractor base that saved us some money. The 2022 bond is a much more challenging bond. And I think this illustrates to me one of the real values of the BOC. It's kind of like right now, I'm taking my father-in-law, who just recently lost his wife, through a process financially to try to figure out his estate and matters. And he's got some big decisions to make. Well, we're going to meet with a financial planner, not because that really, at the end of the day, that financial planner told him what decisions to make. He kind of already knew the decisions. But meeting with a professional that's in the space and sees things, it brings confidence to decision making. I think a really good illustration of that for the 2022 bond projects is Jane Rusteman Elementary School. I was just talking with Jeff about, you guys remember, we went CMAR so that we could buy equipment early and store it on site so that we could get the school opened on time. And we're now at that point. I think that was a really good decision. I think the BOC was instrumental in providing the kind of confidence needed to make those kinds of decisions. So challenges. I think one of the big challenges of the BOC, and we just had a long conversation about this at the last meeting, we're really only able to go surface level on a lot of things because there's just not the time. Now, I think probably some of the committee members would say they're drinking through a fire hose and it's too much information. I know a lot of them feel like it's not enough information. The reality is the speed and the pace and the complexity of these projects, it's very difficult on the outside to absorb it in a way to make meaningful recommendations. So you really got to stay big picture. And I think that's a challenge for the committee. So where are we headed? One is we've lost a few members. I feel like we should add a few. We were very mindful the first time we selected members on who should be involved, from representation of the community as well as expertise brought to that committee. I think we've got a few open spots I'd like to fill, so we're in some conversations about how to go about that. Another one we've been talking about is just trying to increase the conduit that the BOC is of information to the community. I think we need to stay with posting on the website, posting our agendas, posting content, and then maybe forums like this, bringing committee members to speak openly in the community about what we're doing. And then lastly, I've been working with Jeff to try to figure out some creative ways to maybe get some of the BOC members to dive just a little bit of a deeper level. And again, that challenge that I described, not in a way to get in the way or slow things down, because I think that's the big risk in getting more people involved, but maybe do it in a way that we can actually bring a deeper level of understanding to that committee while not impeding progress. So I'm looking forward to that. I appreciate you guys having me here, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Combs, for being here. Appreciate your service and everyone's dedication to the BOC. I definitely echo exactly what you said about being a more significant conduit to the community with the information that y'all have. And so I don't know what that looks like in partnering with Mr. Herron and Dr. Carpenter's got ideas already, but I think that would be invaluable because as you know, when you're talking that y'all are at a macro level, you know, we're not even experts in the field. And so for you to say like, hey, we're at a macro level, I think we're, you know, at a higher level than y'all, and the ability for y'all to have candid conversations and really be able to get into some of the details ultimately for what's best for the district, financially, what's best for our kids in their learning environment, what's best for the educators and how they serve our kids. Yeah, I wholeheartly agree, like, you know, bringing the community in on the decisions and the difficult things that y'all are having to evaluate, and hopefully being able to present situations, you know, here at board meetings that it garners interest in the community, and there are individuals who want to join the BOC or want to know how can they help. So I'm all for what you're doing and promoting that. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Sure thing.
So I would just say, again, thank you as well. You know, yourself and your predecessors, the initial group, David Helker, Jason Lillard, Paul Camp, Judson Clark, yourself, Randy Fight. I mean, I know I'm leaving people out, Clark McNulty. There's been a bunch of people that have been a part of this, and you know, there are definitely scenarios that you laid out, a couple here and there, but there are some of those you can specifically put dollar amounts to that saved us money as a district because of you guys' knowledge and your education in the field. And a lot of that was before Jeff, but I know even since Jeff, there's been a lot of support for him. And, you know, us up here, you know, Sam talked about the macro level. You know, we looked at Jeff and we're like, okay, Jeff, this is yes. And he tells us that he's looked into it. This is what he believes. And this is what the BOC agrees. And your CMAR scenario for Jane Russman's a perfect example of that. So thank you. Any way we can get you guys more involved to support Jeff and the team, I think that's only going to benefit us all as a district. And finding a way to share more about what you do with the community, I think is going to be great for us, because it's going to get more people involved, so that you guys can move on and do other things.
Absolutely.
And there are things that obviously some of us have known from our experience on being on the BOC and hearing about it, but I wish there were a counter to show like dollars saved to this district, to the taxpayers, to where we can best utilize our bond funds through what the BOC's advised and recommended, utilizing their expertise. So again, it's truly invaluable, the service that y'all are providing to the district. So
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it my turn?
I thought Liz was going again.
She'll be back, don't
She's
worry.
getting her steps tonight. Yes.
I think it's my turn.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent, okay. Well, even though it's summer, I still have student celebrations because that's our number one priority, is celebrate our kiddos. So just wanted, since school has been out, we were still in the baseball playoffs when school ended, so I just want to give an update where baseball ended. They did finish with a strong year, 29-9. Fell to the eventual 5A state champions, Grapevine High School. So congratulations to Grapevine High. But that is who we lost to there at the very end. But an incredible year. They were so fun to watch throughout the playoffs. We know that they will be back. We have several kids returning. Even though it's summer, band has been out here. If you've driven by, they've been doing percussion camp. We've had wind camp going on. Just so you know, this morning, Mr. Bird shared with us that we're expecting 167 band members. It's the largest by far band we've ever had. I think 20 plus more than we had this last year. So 167 students we're expecting for the band program. We have 762 current students participating in summer strength and conditioning between the middle and the high schools. So we have a lot of kids, a lot of action going on in our campuses. We have summer school going on, but that's a very large number of summer students participating. And then finally, just from a student standpoint, UIL announced last week that there'll be changes to the playoff structure. And so football's already in 2 divisions. Every other sport will be still have the 4 teams that qualify for the playoffs and then divide off into enrollment. So that is a change to how things have happened in the past. So that will look different for all divisions across in every sport except football, but we're looking forward to that new process coming out this fall and in the spring and in the winter sports. So that's for student celebrations. As far as construction news, we had a great turnout on the 5th for the Bond 22 Stadium and Indoor Activity Center groundbreaking. So thank you for everyone that came out to that. We look forward to seeing the progress over here at the high school as those projects begin to take shape. And then we have a big groundbreaking event this Thursday for the middle school over on 407. That begins at 10 a.m. And we've sent information out. It's been posted on social. We invite everyone to join us, but access will be off of Sam Davis. We don't have access off of 407 yet, so that will be where you access that groundbreaking. We will also be having the Jane Russman Elementary formal dedication September 25th at 5:30, and we'll be sending information out about that, but we're excited to get to have that a ribbon cutting ceremony officially once school has started. And then please take note, because it's been the buzz around here today, but there is a new 4-way stop right here at Canyon Falls, and there are 4 stop signs. So as you are driving on Canyon Falls, make sure you know it is now a 4-way stop. There are big orange flags to help stand out, but you still might need more than just the orange flags to be mindful of that. So please know that that is there, and it is a 4-way stop now. So just some things upcoming this summer for our online listeners and those that are here today. The spring and summer demographer report will be out in July, so we will have a presentation at the July 15th board meeting. The fall report will be in November after we have snapshot. We will also have a budget review for the 24-25 in July in anticipation of a budget adoption in August. As many of you are aware, through a series of board workshops and financial strategy meetings by the district all spring, we have reduced the $4.6 million budget shortfall that was facing us next year to under $500,000 at this point. So we're continuing to work through that, and we'll have an update at the July meeting. Last year, we did not accept any temporary transfers due to enrollment numbers at our elementaries and our capacities, but with the opening of JRE, we're now at a point where we can let our temporary transfers in, those that are finishing homes that want to start the school year here. And so we are up to 90 approved temporary transfers and 4 on the waiting list, and I believe that grows just about every day. Ms. McGarvey's overseeing that. From a principal standpoint, for our community and our parents, they've been revising our student handbooks this summer. So it's very important for everyone to know that they're aligning. There's going to be 1 elementary student handbook and 1 secondary student handbook. They are aligning and revising dress codes. And so we will be sending out communication to parents in the next couple of weeks that will talk about the dress code, so you have adequate time to be able to prepare for that. And then we'll so that principals you'll be ready for that come August. And then we've also been working on the employee handbook, specifically addressing professional dress codes. So we're making a lot of strides in those and aligning with our expectations here in the district. And then something that's been in the works that we're working on setting up this summer that I think is important for our community to hear is we are working on some web pages within our website. We're going to have a records retention process that will be posted publicly. We will have a one-stop shop for TEA required postings. We will have administrative regulations as we begin to build those on the website, which are related to local and legal policy. We will have a bullying, harassment, and discrimination website that goes along with policies FFI and FFH with FAQs so parents know what to expect when a claim or report has been made. We will have a safety and security page that will explain our standard response protocols, our drill information, and resources for parents when our students do have drills on campus or a standard response protocol to an event. We are also going to have a Public Information Act data processing page. This will be a repository of all open records requests and the responsive documents to each request. And then finally, we will have a dictation of public comments from board meetings with appropriate district response if necessary. So a lot being built in our communications department this summer regarding resources for community. And then finally, just remember, legislative advocacy doesn't stop. We still have our Take Action Argyle page up, and we need people to continue to fill it out for us. So that is all I have.
All right, thank you, Dr. Carpenter. All right, we'll move on to information only. Ms. Bresnan, are you ready?
Actually, it's
Oh.
Mr. Ledford, I think.
What the heck? Have I got a weird one here?
I think,
Along with her help if I need it, right?
Hold on, we're gonna switch seats real quick. All right, I apologize, Ms. Bresnan. I apologize, Mr. Ledford.
So we have a few price increases for our lunches. Some of the background information for our elementary school campuses. We use a paid lunch equity tool that's published by the USDA that tells us pretty much what we have to charge for their lunches. They're going up just a little bit. For the secondary campuses, the USDA requires that meals not receiving federal reimbursement must be priced at least the same amount as all funds received from a paid National School Lunch Plan meal. So in order to do that, we're gonna have to go up a little bit in our prices for those lunches to make sure that we're gonna have enough money to be self-sufficient. And the prices are there for elementary school campuses. The increase 15 cents for breakfast, 15 cents for lunch, and then for secondary, the breakfast will not have any increase. Lunch will be 25 cents increase for the 6th grade. In the high school, no increase. And then some of our specialty meals, 25 cents, and then 50 cents for the market deli. You guys have any questions?
No, sir. I don't. Anyone?
I think you guys are doing a great job holding your own.
For sure.
You know. You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
We'll
Thanks.
bring that back in July.
This will be the one that you had on your desktop just a second ago. We wanted to pull up. So this is a discussion about a bond, or order of bond issuance from the 2022 bond. As we discussed just a minute ago with 2017 bond, the 2022 bond has multiple sales and issues as well. And we are scheduled for a potential sale possibly later this summer, which would be our third and final sale from the 2022 bond. This sale could potentially also include the Prop C that was approved for technology in the 2024 bond in this past May, and combine those together in this sale. And so I believe you have the bond order in your sample bond order in your book. But the thing that we'd like to talk over tonight, we've got Julie McMillan here from RBC, and she's going to go over top of the schedule and the potential tax impact and tax schedule on that.
Good evening.
Hi, Julie.
Good evening.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having us. And I think I'll start, let me hop through a couple pages here. Again, as Liz said, this is really to review the bond order. That is a parameters order, much like the district has done in the past. You pass an order that allows Dr. Carpenter and Liz to proceed with planning for the bond sale. And then as we work toward that schedule, they'll make the final determination around the pricing of the bonds. And that'll fit within a certain set of parameters that are outlined in the order. And it's the methodology that the district has used for all of its new money sales for the last, I'm going to say about 10 years, and for its refunding sales as well. So I'll give you just a little bit of a market review. As we walk into the sale, we're looking for a sale probably in mid to late August before the district passes its tax rate. The market has been a little volatile this year. I'm sure you all know that, inflationary pressure is really kind of putting a pause on what the Fed would expect to have done with rates. Walking into 24, we were really expecting that the Fed would lower rates over the course of this year. And as of late last week, they have now backed down to likely only one cut in the Fed funds rate before the end of 2024. So rates have remained slightly elevated. It's all about the Fed trying to manage inflation and kind of slow that down to try to manage the economy and not have us in, a really, what they consider a very bad position. So you'll see here, I think Fed funds rate is staying in this like kind of 5 range with likely maybe a drop there at the end of 24. This is all Treasury notes there on the upper right-hand side. You'll see equity markets are kind of on the rise, and then you'll see the U.S. Treasury rates, and you can see from 2021 how rates have kind of risen. Yes, there's volatility in the middle there, and in 2024, we really started the year, saw some volatility. Rates have been rising, and they're kind of slightly stable right now, if you could call it that. Really haven't seen a lot of stability this year. So you'll see here in the lower left-hand corner, current MMD. Yellow is MMD as of June 7th. That's really the current scale. MMD is our index. It's what we kind of structure our bonds off of. The 15-year average is there down at the bottom in the, I don't know if that's a black, a dark blue. I'm not sure what these colors are. Hard to distinguish, my apologies. And that's kind of the average over the last 15 years. The royal blue there was the MMD curve last summer, so at about the same time a year ago. So we're really right up on top of where we were in 2023. Though rates have risen, they've kind of come back a little bit. And we're going to stay in this volatile market, we think, for the rest of the year. So it's still not, it's not as if rates have risen well above. You're not seeing a yield curve where the 30-year rate is, in that 4s and 5s. So we still believe it is a attractive time to be in the market. Clearly not as attractive as it was prior to 2021, where we were seeing rates in those high 2s, low 3s, even for a 20 or 30-year issuance. So keep going. Here you'll see the bond buyer geo index is really an index that we use. It's made up of about 20 geo bond transactions. It's an index that's taken weekly, and you'll see that nearly, like today's level of 4%, 3.97, is still lower than like 74% of the time. So though certainly rates have risen in the last year or two, we're still in an attractive range for tax-exempt muni rates. So the plan of finance for the 2024 series of bonds is to sell the remaining authorization from the 2022 Prop A, which is the 5th elementary, and maybe some other change. I'm not exactly sure. It's a few other probably small projects, renovations. There may be some technology and buses in there as well. I can't remember exactly how much the split is per project. And then to sell the $6.5 million, that was the Prop C, which is an all-technology proposition from this May 2024 authorization. It does, we are looking at, what the TAV will be, we've gotten some preliminary values from DCAT already this year. And then we are structuring this 2024 sale, anticipating that the district will be coming back with elections over the next couple of years to try to address continued growth within the district, right? So we're not thinking, this is it, you're done for the next 10 years. We know that. There's a number of other assumptions we make in the bond plan. They're listed here. I would say probably one of the outcomes of the homestead exemption change last year is that the district does receive from some reimbursement funding from the state. You know, when the homestead changed from $40,000 to $100,000, you lost that revenue, right? Because the homes that had a value, that value then, if they hadn't gone up from growth, they would have lowered the value of those homes. So the district is receiving some reimbursement from the state, and we should continue to receive reimbursement on the remaining $54 million that was from the 2022 authorization, because it was authorized before that homestead exemption changed. We won't receive any reimbursement for the 2024 authorization, and there's no reimbursement for districts for authorizations that are passed after August 31st of 2023. So any future elections won't receive that reimbursement. But this last sale will should get some reimbursement in the next fiscal year. Let's see. So this is a preliminary set of numbers. You can see the sources and uses. We have a $54.9 million project fund deposit. That's really the 2022 authorization. And you see a $6.5 million project fund deposit. That's really the technology. It's again a 30-year structure. It'll have a 10-year optional call. And right now, this was based on current market rates. I think about June 7th, I probably have the date in here, and with some cushion of about 30 basis points in it. And so we're expecting an all-in TIC, which is kind of like your APR on a home loan, of about 4.65%. This is the structure of the debt service. So you'll see that the capital project, the school building, is amortized over the 30 years, but that technology is amortized short in only 7 years. We don't amortize technology over a long period of time because we know you're going to spend it, use it, replace it, and its average life is not 20 or 30 years. So the last is our bond plan that we typically show you all when we have an authorization or a new money sale, and you'll see kind of columns 5 and 6 are the sale for the 2022 authorization and the 2024 authorization, and that debt service structure is listed there. You'll see that in year 26 right now, if the district did nothing else, the tax rate would start to decline, right? So we know that that's really we're preserving capacity for the next bond elections and the next sales. And so that's why the tax rate it is declining in year 26 and beyond. And then you'll see our timetable calls for us we're beginning to prepare the POS. We've requested the PSF backing from the state of Texas, and expect to hear about that at the end of this week or early next week. We will again request a rating on the bonds for the district from Moody's Investor Service, so there'll be a rating call at the end of July, and we look to have our offering documents together at the beginning of August and price in mid-August, so that we're pricing ahead of the budget and tax rate meeting on August 19th. Any questions?
Yes, can you go back to the all-in cost slide?
Uh-huh.
Where you,
Up right there.
right there. And so you're saying your all-in is 4.65%. That's what you're projecting, I guess,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you sell $55 million in bonds, the total debt service is going to be $112 million.
Yes.
With interest, that's your amortized out
Over 30 years. Mm-hmm.
over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I'm just trying to understand, if you thought the interest rates were going to drop,
Yeah.
you would say wait.
Yes. Meaningfully. Well, it's a combination of factors. If the district has a project that it needs to complete by a certain time, right?
Yeah, then you can't wait.
Then it's tough to wait, because you can't let those contracts, you can't move forward on that project. If you're talking about waiting 2 or 3 months, maybe that's possible. I don't know. We don't anticipate meaningful change in interest rates really over the next 6 months. We're thinking it's more early 2025 before we'll see some meaningful change in the yield curve for us, because the Fed's just not dropping that front end, and our yield curve really responds to kind of where the front end of the curve is, where Fed funds rate is. It's kind of driving a lot of that yield curve.
And so if rates did drop drastically, and we said, man, we should have waited 6 months because rates, presidential election happened, whatever, some other event, you could just refinance, right?
We cannot refinance right away. Muni bonds are sold with a 10-year optional call feature. They're not callable at any time like your home mortgage is. Muni buyers like to buy and hold those bonds. A lot of times they're bought by institutional investors, and they're kind of matching that asset to a liability they have. So they want some security that the bonds are going to stay. And so that's just not a typical structure for us. We can investigate alternative call features, so you can make part of those bonds callable in 3 years or 5 years. It does come at a premium, meaning you pay a little bit more for the investor to give you that flexibility right up front. So you're paying up front for a feature that you may want to access in 3 to 5 years, let's just say. I'm just putting out some numbers out there.
Haven't we done that in the past, refinanced?
We refinance bonds all the time. It's all around that call feature. So these bonds won't be callable until 2035, 34, 35, right? And we can call them. You're allowed to call and refund bonds. In the tax-exempt world, we're really only allowed now to do that when we get close to the call date, because the federal government took away our ability to do advance refunding bonds back in 17 or 18. And so the only way to advance refund a tax-exempt bond now is with a taxable bond. There's some tenders, there's some other tools we can use, but that's all about the market working within those features to be economically advantageous to the district to undergo some of those things, right? And right now, taxable rates are so high that you wouldn't refund a tax-exempt bond with taxable rates. But we've done it in the past. So
It's very confusing for me.
So taxable rate is, so the tax-exempt bond, why those are attractive is because the institutional investor who owns that and makes 4.5% doesn't pay any income tax on that revenue. Versus buying a corporate bond that's taxable, they may get 6% back, but they're paying, tax on that interest income that they make. So the advantage to tax-exempt bonds is that the investor does not pay income tax on the revenue they make off of them. So we tend to be priced lower than a taxable bond. So
I'm trying to figure out where I look back. I know this is crystal ball stuff, and so where I'd look back and go, ooh, that was we could have afforded we could wait a little longer.
Yep.
And interest rates dropped to 3%, and we're going, man, we can't even refinance because we can't refinance till 2035. That's when we look back and go, oh, we should have waited. Right.
If you have that crystal ball,
yeah,
get out that magic 8 ball and help me out. I won't have a job anymore.
Could you sell half and then sell the other half? Could I go $25 million now, get the project started, sell the other $25 million?
That's more of a question. Legally, you guys can't enter into a contract. It depends on kind of the contract and how you structure the contract for the building, but you can't execute the contract without the cash in hand. And so you can't do half the building. You can't do half the building that way. Does that make sense?
We'd have to get our bond attorney involved in that question, but the basics of the answer is you're supposed to have the funds in hand before you let the contract.
So the ones that we have refinanced over the last years that I've been around here, were those all the 10-year no call? It sounds. I don't remember that being the
prior
case.
to 2017, we could advance refund a bond once in its lifetime. So we likely did that. Off the top of my head, we've done a number of refundings. So we used to be able to say refund them 2 or 3 years before the call date. So you might be able to get at that refinancing at year 7 or 8. We're no longer allowed to do that. The federal government took that away from tax exempt issuers because they felt like you had this tax exempt issue outstanding. You then issued a new one to pay this one off, so then they both lived out in the world, and investors owned both of them for some time period, and they didn't like giving investors that optionality to have that many tax exempt bonds out and available in the market, right? So they took that away in 2017. And so now we can advance refund them if the taxable market allows that to happen and it's economically advantageous. There's some ways the district can go out and buy its own bonds if it's, again, economically advantageous for them to take some of their debt service funding and go in and buy bonds because they're being sold in a way that it's economically advantageous. Sometimes investors respond to those it's called a tender offer to those opportunities. Sometimes they don't. It's not a guarantee that you'll take out a whole series of bonds. So there are ways. The district has some bonds. Its call features are coming up, like the 2016 bonds will be callable in 26. The 17 bonds will be callable in 27. So from a managing the district's debt portfolio perspective, the district has callable bonds it's going to be able to refund over the next couple of years. So they may not get to this one if rates go down, but they'll be able to get to other ones as rates go down.
So where we stand today versus, and you said you guys are thinking in 6 months, you think there won't be any significant or meaningful movement, I think you said, for 6 months. Does it make sense to look at varying options on call terms?
We certainly can. We can price some of those options. Liz can take a look at them and decide. Certainly we can look at call features.
So if the Fed cuts the rate in the fourth quarter of 24, a quarter of a point, I think was the prediction last Wednesday.
Yep.
What is that? I mean, it's not a quarter point drop from the 4.7, right?
No, because that's probably already priced into our scale. I know it's weird. Investors kind of anticipate those kinds of things happening, so it's a little bit baked into where numbers are right now. There's also a number of other factors that are influencing the exact pricing on any given day, like how many bonds are in the market. August tends to be a big redemption period, meaning lots of bonds mature in August. So if I'm an investor and my bonds mature, I got to turn around and buy new ones, whereas in October, there aren't as many redemptions, so I might not have cash in October if I'm an investor. So supply and demand work in our market just like they do in everything else, and August tends to be a big redemption period. And so if that's when issuers are coming to market, investors tend to be a little bit more flush with cash because they've gotten bonds redeemed or matured. And so they've got to replace those investments with something. So beyond the Fed, there's supply and demand. How many school districts have come? Texas PSF paper has come to market is always something we're monitoring. And so as we move forward in preparing this transaction, we're looking at all those factors to see where we can try. We can't time the market, but preparing the district, and the parameters order gives us the flexibility to wait if we get to August and the market looks terrible and there's a ton of competition and pricing has not gone well for other districts. We have up to a year to price these bonds once we pass the parameters order. It does not mean that we have to stick to the schedule that we have right here. We have it laid out, but it gives us the ability to be flexible and to respond if there is an opportunity in the market that's really attractive. Like if things are going well, we can get in the market. If things are not going so well, we can back off the transaction and slow it down. So we'll have some choices. But we can certainly look at optional call features as well if you all are feeling like you want to preserve some of that call feature for the district down the road.
Because I don't think it's going up.
Yeah.
I mean, no one thinks rates are going up.
We thought they were going to go down all year long, so it's really interesting. But they've operated in this higher range. It's a little up and down in that range, but they've operated in this range.
We think they're either going to be the same or go down.
That's our anticipation over the next 2 years. We would hope for that, yes.
But Josh, this is the same people that said that we'd have 3 rate cuts by now too in 2024. So
yeah, but it hasn't gone up. So the only thing that hurts is if it goes up.
If it goes up again, if they actually
That's the only
increase
thing you're
rates.
hedging, right?
They're holding it steady right now.
and it all has to balance in the parameters of when we need to build.
Yeah,
Right.
and I don't have that.
So
But we can certainly come back with some other scenarios and some other call features and, look at what that looks like.
I think the key, though, is you said that once we put in this submit this paperwork, for lack of a better word, we have, how many months? 12 months?
12 months. Yeah,
So we
flexibility.
can still, yes, we have to balance it when we need the money, but we can still kind of
Yes.
play it a little bit.
We can look at the market and look at some other, kind of considerations for the structure and determine whether or not that looks like a reasonable expense. You're prepaying for that call feature. So if rates don't go down, you really have, that's really at an economic disadvantage to the district. So if rates don't go down where you could refund the bonds, you've prepaid to refund the bonds.
And again,
So-
we lean on y'all to be the experts, so.
We
trust
wouldn't
you.
recommend the entire structure, but if you're like, we'd like to preserve some of this to be called early, we could look at a certain amount of the bonds to be called early. We've done it with many districts that were in growth mode.
So basically what you're asking us to do is authorize this, and then you work with Liz to try to time it. Over the next 12
Prepare all the
months.
documents, get the ratings, get the underwriting team together, and, move forward with pricing, and make those final decisions about structure, call features, yes.
And this is information tonight. It'll come back in July. It's
Yeah.
asking for action. And at that point, we can bring back some more information on different structures.
We could
Yeah.
have a rate increase by then.
We could have a rate increase by then, we'll see. And we'll keep that updated. When I come back in July, we'll have a new set of numbers. We'll know where the market is as we move closer to the pricing.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks, all.
Thank you,
Sounds good.
Julie.
Thank you.
You got it?
Okay, the next item is, I think the two of us, board operating procedures, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm not gonna speak anymore. I've been so wrong on the agenda, so.
It's summer. No, you're good. Okay, we're on board operating procedures. So this is just an annual revision to the board operating procedures. Obviously, the board adheres to legal and local policies, and then there's always kind of a set of procedures that the board operates under, and so it's time to review those and approve a new set. And so tonight they're in for information only, and then we'll come back for board approval, consideration of approval in July. So if you have any questions, comments, we can take notes, we can make adjustments, but we will bring it back to you in July. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's your turn again.
He's just gonna open them for you. That's why you need to wait to say anything.
What am I supposed to do?
I'm just curious.
I'm not saying anything. Mr. Daniels up here.
Okay, this item is information only as well. And annually, we bring to you our student code of conduct. We adopt the TASB model. And because it's a non-legislative year, as we all know, there weren't any changes to the actual code of conduct. There may be an update. There probably will be an update in mid-July dealing with nicotine pouches.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the same handbook that we had last year, essentially.
Code of
We
conduct.
are in the process, as Dr. Carpenter mentioned, working on student handbooks, which you will have some input and be able to look at those, but they will not come up for a vote. They're considered admin regulations, but you'll probably hear more about that later this week in board notes. As she mentioned, we'll be addressing everything is in the handbook, but we're putting a focus on dress code this year. So any changes about the student code of conduct? So we have a student code of conduct, and then we have handbooks.
And the
that are
law
more.
requires the board to adopt and approve a student code of conduct. So that's why that is being presented in front of you this evening. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have policy updates. This is policy update 123. We have a cover sheet, and then we have a very brief presentation, but you also have access to all of our notes and side-by-sides and all of the details. I wanted to kind of go through the process and what this looks like for us when we receive updates from TASB.
You can just open up the presentation. Yes.
Yeah. The first thing I'll mention is that there's two parts to it. There's a legal and there's a local. Legal is something that we have to do. Local is something that we can adopt that TASB gives us, or we can modify it to our district, which we've done with EFA and EFB, which Dr. Jordan's going to speak about here in just a minute. But when we receive, if you've looked at those documents, they're pretty lengthy. But what we do with those is we put those into a spreadsheet, and we summarize them. Each one is assigned to a staff member, whether it's Ms. Stewart, Dr. Jordan, myself, whoever it's relevant to. And we look through it and decide, are we going to make the recommendation that TASB is recommending, or are we going to make some changes? We also, what else was I going to say? Oh, and then we're in the process, which we don't have right now, of developing regulations behind those. And those are the specifics on how we implement that policy. Even though it's written as policy, it's step-by-step procedures. Okay, so I just wanted you to know, I think you already knew the process, but I wanted to make sure you understand kind of our side of it and what we do with it. We don't just get it, send it to you, and say, approve this. We go through it line by line to make sure that it's aligned, especially the local policies are in line with what we believe our community would want as a policy. And so, there were a bunch of them, and so I'm going to just highlight a few of them.
Will you go back to the first slide,
Back to the first
please?
page. First. So I'm going to jump to the middle because the rest of them are yours. Just that very the one. Okay, so DEC local is mental health leave. That was a policy that came into effect a few years ago for police officers and peace officers, which our board allowed 5 extra days of paid leave, if there was ever an incident that was in their line of employment. And so TASB is recommending that be included for any employee that needs mental leave in regards to an incident that occurred during their time of employment. Okay, and then I'll let you talk about the rest of this.
CQC local guidelines for digital devices. So this is when we would have to write some administrative regulations to implement guidelines for the effective use of digital devices. And they have included a packet that outlines their guidelines. The things that they have put in there that they would like school districts to address in the regulations is the use of digital devices for different ages and developmental stages, amount of time spent at school, the amount of time recommended for homework, breaks, the ergonomic placement of the device, and just recommendations for daily screen time. There are not specifications like numbers associated with these things in the guidelines, except for the age range of 0 to 2 years old. It says less than 1 hour per day. All the other ages, which are the ages we have, they do not put a number, minutes, hours on there. So that would be something we could consider for our administrative regs. And I hope that I can get some volunteers from our board to create another subcommittee to work on that, because this is something that's near and dear to our hearts, to many of our parents. And so I think this is another opportunity for us to review that together. The next one, EEH local homebound services, now also includes psychological services. It used to be more specific in saying medical. If a student was confined to a hospital or home for a minimum of 4 weeks, consecutively, now it extends medical to include psychological. Made another brief change for special education students. It was worded a little bit differently, and they specified need not be consecutive.
So just so we're clear, so when we bring this back in July, CQC local is adopted very generically, but the admin regs will be our specificity that you would work with the subcommittee.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
And DNA legal, it's the optional use of alternate domain 1 rubric. This is our teacher evaluation tool. So this legal update is designed for districts that have implemented or adopted the highly the HQIM, instructional materials. So like with HMH that we just adopted, it comes with lesson plans. So teachers are not required to write those. However, we do not have that for every single subject and every single grade level. And so the new regulations say, instead of teachers design lesson plans, it uses the word internalize. Teachers internalize lesson plans that are provided by a publisher. Two things. One, it would require all of our administrators attend another training before that they could start their teacher evaluations. Two, it wouldn't really apply to every teacher and every subject level and every grade. So we're sticking with the original domain one, and we got some insider information at our TPES training this last week that they said they're probably going to do a pretty big overhaul of the whole process for the next year. So we're going to hang on another year, get retrained when the new process comes out, and it better fits all of our staff for now. Will you go to the next slide, please? Oh, I'm sorry, I have the remote. And the old EF policy was repealed, replaced with two separate policies, EFA local regarding instructional materials, EFB local about our library collections. So we did have a subcommittee of board members who worked with me through this, and we have the TASB model, which had some great bones to it, but our subcommittee decided to add some more specific terms to outline what we consider inappropriate. There was one small change that the TASB representative recommended, which was to remove the exact penal code from our wording. So in case that is ever changed in any way, we would still be in compliance. And so that one change, that word, penal code, whatever it was, that part was removed in the edition that you see. All the wording from the penal code is still there exactly the same. And so that was just a recommendation. I can add it back in if you prefer. You can think about that and let me know how you feel about it. But that was the reason for that word not being in there.
So that that penal code, when we talked about it, didn't come from TASB originally. That came from one of the other districts we looked at. Correct.
The writing out what the penal code said did not come from TASB. They just refer to the legal policy without naming it. In case it ever changes, they don't have to go in and rename it.
Okay.
Am I making sense, Mr. Hawkins?
No, I understand that, but I'm looking at our resident attorney.
Calling it something very
Isn't there a way to
specific.
say this penal code and any subsequent alterations of this penal code? That way we are specific?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm not a criminal lawyer, but the penal code, I mean, it's not, I mean, there's lots of different statutes in there. So you couldn't just say any subsequent.
Any resulting or?
I mean, perhaps, yeah. But I think what they're saying is even broader, which is not necessarily bad. Because it's just referring to the penal code in totality.
Well,
as
we
opposed
have
to a
all the
specific
language
statute.
from the penal code, just the actual number was removed.
Correct.
Correct.
I think it covers you more.
Yes.
Okay.
And the language is in the policy, so it just stands out more.
Okay.
Kept the guts, not the cover.
Did anybody else on the subcommittee want to offer anything else as far as EFA and EFB?
No, I think you did a great job in laying it out there for us.
I thought
to
this
take a
was my
look
one
at.
chance that I could put you on the spot and ask you a question you weren't prepared for, maybe. And nothing. I got nothing back.
All the time. I feel that all
How
the
did
time.
you-
We can sit here and talk about it, but you're going over your over.
Did you
number,
like the
whatever
process?
over.
Did you like the process?
I thought it was great.
Okay.
It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
she had
Loved it.
everything given to
Okay.
us with
Okay.
time to look over it. and-
Packet number 2 will be coming your way shortly then.
So I think that for me, the process was good because not only did we get to see what TASB had, but we got to see what other districts were
Right.
doing.
Yes.
We all know those districts that are over there, farther out there. And I think it was good for us to be able to pick and choose kind of
Yep.
what we thought and what we felt aligned with our community values. So I thought that was a good part.
And I think it was a perfect example of that as we get model policy, local recommendations. Again, they're local. The board owns local policies, so the board has the opportunity to make those local policies state what they need to say if we don't like the model policy or it doesn't fit our community, so.
And you can do nothing too, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you can accept it.
You
as
can
is.
adopt
Or
it
you
as
can,
is.
or you don't have to adopt anything. You don't even have to adopt the policy.
Well, the legal policy's
The
coming to
legal
us.
policy,
Right.
but the local policy, you say, look, I don't.
Sometimes the legal will state, depending on, sometimes the legal will state that there is a local coming, or that there's a local attached, but not always. Correct. You could just have the legal.
For example, in EFA and EFB, there, it does point out that administrative regulations will do such and such. So then we're going to have to, not that that's a local policy, but we do have to follow it with something that specifies how we are handling or addressing
And
that
the legal
issue.
version of EFA and EFB is EF. It's EF legal, and then it breaks off into two.
So sometimes you have a legal policy that requires you to have a local policy.
Correct.
Correct.
But absent that, you don't really have to have a local.
Right.
You're
You don't
correct.
have to. Correct.
And I liked the WebEx piece. I liked getting the fact that you reviewed it and gave us some of your comments up front, because it gave us some food for thought, in certain things to look at and to emphasize and pay attention to. So that we each had an opportunity to review ahead of time and sit down together and come to that meeting. And
Would it be too much
Be
to ask
comfortable.
when we're looking at local policy, whether this is a legally required local policy or just a discretionary local policy?
No, I don't think it's too much to ask.
No, I think we can determine that pretty
Yeah.
quickly when the updates come out. We should be able to determine that pretty quickly. All right,
Any other
thank you.
questions? That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Move to action.
Yes, we're down to section 10. Okay, so I will discuss this item. We are bringing a resolution to the board to consider adopting. We have 2 or 3 items tonight that they're going to address and recommend some salary incentives for our hardworking, amazing staff in this district. But prior to asking you to take action on some of that, we feel like we still need to address legislatively and advocate for what has not been done for us yet across the state as a district. So, as you know, we had a legislative session last spring. We had 4 legislative or special sessions with still no relief to the student basic allotment. Without no relief to the student basic allotment and a funding cliff with the formula transition grant, we have no additional revenue going into the 24-25 school year. So after talking through that with our team and talking with some superintendents in other districts, we are recommending a resolution that we can take upon adoption, submit to the state, to Governor Abbott, to submit to our legislative state representatives with a copy of this board meeting and a copy of our agenda. Because it actually addresses the very own teacher vacancy task force that Governor Abbott put into place. That report came out, it was 59 pages long, it came out in February of 23, perfect timing of the legislative session last year, and still nothing was done. And there were 50 people on that committee, including teachers across the state. And within that, it talks about compensation packages for staff, it talks about training and support and working conditions. And none of that has necessarily been addressed at this point. Now, recently, there has been some talk about the teacher incentive allotment and how that is extra money that's been given to districts, but that is not nearly as easy as it sounds. The teacher incentive allotment is really designed for rural status and low socioeconomic status school districts to really capitalize off of the funds with the TIA. So districts like Argyle don't necessarily would not necessarily benefit from that, and to the degree that some people on social media at the state level have wanted to say at this point. So we just feel like as a high-performing district, and that we work in collaboration and partnerships with our parents to be able to uphold the values of this community, that we want to express that we are in the same situation and we want to advocate and compensate our staff, and we're in a position where it's not that easy. This board has historically given raises to staff and has never batted an eye at that, and to be in a position where we are right now and having to get creative with how we can do some compensation is difficult. And so I just ask that the board consider this resolution, and if you so choose to adopt it, read it into somebody can read it into the record, and then we will get that sent off. But the cover sheet also has a link to the task force report I would encourage anyone to read it. It's got some great information in there, and we just need it to be brought into fruition. So,
It has to be the board secretary read it, right?
yes,
Okay, I just
Sounds good to me.
I just want to clarify that.
Of course you do, sir.
Okay.
Some water.
Motion it first.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10A as discussed.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. McDavid, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Mr. Matthew Slayton, if you'd like to read this resolution that we've just passed into record.
Would love to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolution of the Argyle Independent School District Board of Trustees regarding the vital role of educators and staff in Texas. Whereas a general diffusion of knowledge is essential to the preservation of the liberties and rights of the people, Texas Constitution, Article 7, Section 1, whereas educators and staff contribute to the civic, cultural, and economic well-being of Texas by preparing future citizens, thereby safeguarding the liberties and rights of the people. Whereas educators and staff are identified as the single most important factor impacting student outcomes, Governor's Teacher Vacancy Task Force Final Report 2023. Whereas great educators and staff are instrumental in creating great schools, which in turn foster great communities, making the retention and recruitment of both educators and staff paramount, not just for our students, but also for the broader community. Whereas the Governor's Teacher Vacancy Task Force 2023 highlighted that salary increases have not kept pace with recent inflation rates, contributing to educators and staff leaving the field. Whereas the Governor's Task Force recommended increasing the basic allotment to enable schools to offer substantial compensation and benefits to address retention and recruitment issues. And whereas despite entering its 88th legislative session with a historic 32.7 billion budget surplus, the state has failed to allocate sufficient funding to provide much needed pay raises for educators, address skyrocketing inflation, more than 17%, address underfunded mandates, and update the basic allotment, which has remained unchanged since 2019. Now let it be resolved that the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees and Administration recognize and acknowledge the invaluable contributions of our educators and staff, to not just to our community, but to the state of Texas and its citizens. That the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees and Administration are committed to recruiting, supporting, and retaining our excellent educators and staff, and will continue to seek ways to reward and incentivize them, which includes increasing compensation and benefits. That the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees and Administration strongly urge the Governor and Legislature to fulfill their constitutional duty to make suitable provision for the support and maintenance of an efficient system of public free schools, Texas Constitution, Article 7, Section 1. That is part of this bold action. The Governor and Legislature support our hardworking educators and staff by increasing the basic allotment to a level necessary to address pay disparities and offset inflation, ensuring significant increases to all educators and staff salaries. Be it further resolved that Argyle ISD Board of Trustees and Administration share a unified message on this issue. As a proud, fast growth, and high achieving destination district, Argyle ISD continues to strive for excellence in education and community engagement. To ensure our district remains a beacon of high performance and accountability, we respectfully request and passionately urge Governor Abbott and the Texas Legislature to increase the basic allotment. This crucial support will enable us to provide much needed and deserved pay increases to our dedicated educators and staff who work tirelessly to nurture and educate our students. Adequate compensation is essential to attract and retain top talent. Continued investment in our schools ensures they remain competitive and capable of producing upstanding patriotic, and well-rounded citizens that contribute to the future of Texas and to maintain a top state status for our economy, business, and job growth. We are committed to our mission of preparing students for a bright future and believe that with your support, Texas public schools can continue to excel and lead the way. Adopted on this 17th day of June, 2024 by the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton.
Great job. All right, thank y'all very much. We'll get your signatures and get that sent.
Greg, you weren't recording, were you? We gotta redo that?
All right, that leads us to the next topic.
Last month, we came to you with information and brought to you some different options for compensation plan for the next school year. And this past spring, we had been discussing compensation plans as well, looking at inflation and a 9 to 10% increase in insurance rates. We took those options and have focused those down to two. One is, so you're gonna hear two different action items tonight. The first deals with a one-time payment, and the second one, which is the next agenda item, Liz will talk more about that one in a minute. As Dr. Carpenter said earlier, our board has supported pay increases for our staff. I mean, I went back and looked back to 15, 16, starting then. It's been anywhere from 3%, 3%, 4%, 3%. So it's always something that our board has wanted to do for our staff. We're in a different situation this year as far as our finances go. So this first recommendation is for a compensation package that would be funded out of our fund balance. Previous compensation plans did not occur that way. They came out of our M&O. With a one-time payment of $1,000 for professional staff, $500 for paraprofessionals and auxiliary, that would be student nutrition, our aides, our special education aides, and our bus drivers. And it would be paid in two payments, one in October of this current year, and then another in March of 2025. We would also like to add a $50 a month increase to cover health insurance. I will say during all those times that I read off those percentages, we've never done this. We've never added an increase to pay for insurance. That amount has remained the same. Although insurance has gone up.
Just to clarify, not to cover health insurance, but to
Oh, no,
to the
not even
district
close.
to the district
Not even close.
contribution.
And it's been a year since they regionalized premiums, correct? Is this
Yes.
going into year two? So premiums are now regionalized, and so we are obviously one of the highest healthcare regions cost in the state. So ours is Region 11 has gone up significantly.
And then the other adjustment, or the other part of this compensation package, is to increase bus driver pay to $23.50 per hour. Let's see. One other part to this that sometimes confuses people, this means that our salary schedule for teachers will remain the same as it is for this past school year. Which means that if you are, let's say, I think the easiest way to explain it is that if this is your first year of teaching in Argyle ISD, you just finished it, you're making $59,500. Next year, you will also make $59,500. But if there's a brand new teacher that starts this current school year, we can't start them out at $59,500 because they don't have any experience. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we had to back that pay schedule up to $59,300 as year zero to accommodate teachers who are new to the profession in 24-25. I think there's an attachment with that as well, right? Okay.
And the one-time payment if it's adopted tonight prior to the July 1st and contracts starting, that is TRS eligible. And as a one-time payment, the board's not committed to it year over year, so like a percentage raises at this point. So it is a one-time TRS eligible, but it's not a commitment to year over year at this time.
So I saw that it was 800 and something thousand.
890.
890 out of fund balance. Where does that leave us on our requirement for fund balance? I know we've always been ahead of what they require. What is that? Are we still ahead of what they require?
We are going to be tight on what they require regardless of with this or not. And a lot of it's going to depend on where we end this year, which we're still looking at. We're coming in a lot better. I believe Dr. McDade and I were talking about this just earlier this afternoon. We're coming in a lot better on our expenditures at this point in time. And I feel like we need some wood to knock on at this point, right? Don't jinx anything. I believe what you're going to see later on in this agenda is that one budget amendment that we have out there right now where we're lowering, some tax revenues due to some things that happened with the November election, right? Some things that went in there. I think that item is still going to come in a little bit short, but I think that our expenditures will come in. So all that to say, a lot of where we're going to end up will hinge on how we end this year, but I believe that we will still be at the 25% for next year with this recommendation.
When you say they require, who
I believe we're talking about the state requirements,
Yeah.
and they actually
and
require
honestly, whatever.
60.
They can require,
Right.
I mean, we require that they fund us. And the Constitution requires that they fund us, and they didn't. So you're saying we gotta dip into our savings account to compensate the teachers consistent with the resolution we just passed.
That's correct.
I'm in.
Sounds like pretty legal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve action item 10B as presented.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Western, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Matthew Slayton with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you all very much. And we will be sending, later on this evening, we will send a communication out to our staff so that they get information tonight. And then we'll have information and board briefs tomorrow for the community, but we will make sure we send something out to the staff this evening.
Okay.
Okay, so as she gets ready to present this one, this topic is dealing with a potential resolution to consider adopting for a mid-year pay increase of 2% on the determination or whether or not we have a VADER, whether or not you decide to call a VADER in August, the voter approved tax rate election. So that hasn't happened yet, but a resolution is required ahead of time in order for it to be TRS eligible and to be able to change the pay scale compensation plan in the middle of a year. So that's why you're hearing this compensation tonight, or this resolution tonight. This resolution's not about the VADER itself. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. And just to reiterate that, so the VADER time has a certain set of timelines, correct? And we're still talking about that. Action on calling a VADER, actually, the deadline on that is August 19th. And if we continue talking about this subject and continue and bring forward a recommendation, that's the meeting that we would bring that at. But certain things require timeliness. One of these is the mid-year pay increase. In order to even consider this later on in the year, it needs to be adopted now to bring it TRS eligible, and so that you're not doing a mid-year pay increase that wasn't approved, wasn't budgeted for. So that's why this is actually discussed now and why our pay plans are brought to you in June. This is dependent on the VADER, a potential VADER, if it's called, passing in November. If there's no VADER called, or if a VADER is called and does not pass, then of course this action item goes away. So this is only contingent on calling a VADER in August and potential VADER passing by the voters in November. And this would do a 2% increase off the midpoint pay scale. The total cost on this is about $885,000, and I know there's an attachment in there that TASB has provided with this information that has a lower cost. We take that cost, put our benefits and our cost on top of that, and come to you with the full cost of it. So I just want to know why you have two different costs there that you're looking at. We want you to see the full cost. We are talking about a 1 year because you do pay plans in 1 year at a time, right? We're bringing to you a pay plan this year for consideration for next year. Next summer, you would be looking at a pay plan consideration for the year after that. This resolution will not obligate anything beyond the 1 year. Okay, I know there's some information out there, some misinformation talking about, it needs to be every year in advance. If any type of percent pay increase on your salary scale, that is a year-over-year cost. It's not a one-time and then it goes away. But pay plans are considered on an annual basis. So this isn't, this would not do anything other than discuss next year's pay plan and the potential for it happening in mid-year. This doesn't say that the board has to come back and say, we're going to do a 2% or a 3% or whatever it is every single year, because that's a choice for next year and the year after. They are independent choices of each other. But we do feel like this is important for our staff. We feel like there's, looking at neighboring districts, and I know Mr. Daniel's done quite a bit of research on neighboring districts and what they are increasing and what they're paying, and tried to come up with a way, and we discussed this in our budget workshops, a way to actually pay for this other than just our fund balance, because we can't sustain year-over-year increases on our fund balance at this point in time without legislative help. And this is in place of legislative help, right? I mean, this all goes back to the key component. The legislature failed to act. So this is what we're left to look at, and the options that we're left to deal with to provide our staff with a compensation moving forward. And so this resolution, reiterate just again, it involves the potential for calling. The resolution does not call a VADER. The resolution says what happens if the VADER is called and if a VADER passes. And that would be a 2% increase mid-year. And we would, a potential VADER would happen in November. It's early in November, but I'll remind y'all our payroll is always on the 15th or earlier in the month. And so getting that in place by November would be very, very challenging for us. So that's why we've got in here that it would actually happen for the December paycheck and forward. But it would be retroactive for them, if an employee starts their year July 1, or if they start their year August 1st, it would be retroactive to that first day.
Which is why we're doing the resolution.
That's correct.
It covers the law change of a mid-year pay increase.
Right, and it makes it TRS eligible.
Right.
And again,
So, question, which I think you and I talked about earlier. If a VADER if we decide to do a VADER and it does pass, in addition to the 2% pay increase, we've already just approved the one-time payment.
That's correct.
So teachers and staff would get both of those.
That is correct.
Okay.
And so if you look at those combined, that brings it up higher than a 2%, gets you more in line with what some of the other districts are doing around the 3 or 4%.
And the 2% rolls over because it's now part of your salary
Right.
versus the one-time payment. So the 2% would stick with them moving into the following year. It would stay with it. Yes.
So the one-time payment, we kind of have control over that.
Right.
The 2% is going to be dependent on the voters. We're doing a VADER.
Correct.
And then having them vote it.
Yes.
That's correct.
Approve it.
Total, the estimated cost on this is $885,000. In looking at, I know, again, we're not asking you to approve a VADER right now, but, there's questions about dollars and totals. In our budget workshops, we talked about the possibility of a VADER bringing in somewhere between 2.5 and 2.6 million. And if you look at it in the light of we just passed, which, the board just approved the one-time payment that was $890,000. This is $885,000. So both of those then would be funded from the VADER moving forward if that were to happen.
So if we were to move forward with that, are we looking to access all of our available pennies?
We are. That's what we have discussed so far is 7.7 pennies remaining. They're copper pennies. They are not golden pennies. But everything that we have remaining is 7.7. That's what would net the 2.5 to 2.6 million.
And again, the sentiment is for those districts who have remaining pennies, the state is using that as an example.
Yes.
Is that, well, you haven't exhausted all of your efforts for funding
At the local level.
at
Yes.
the local level. So why would we fund you at the state level when you haven't exhausted all efforts at the local level?
That is correct.
That's correct. So yes, it's you need to lower your tax rate. We're going to make everything and compress on the M&O side from the state. But then you also get the message, well, don't complain because you haven't asked your voters. They want the local boards to have to go back to the voters and ask for approval, not at the state level. At the state level, they want to say, hey, we lowered your rates, we did this, we did that, but then they're going to turn around and tell us,
Call
well,
it a wash.
you didn't want to do what you were supposed to do.
Right.
And just a reminder, again, this is not the VADER approval, but we did lower the tax rate, the M&O side, just over 18.5 pennies this year. We will not be able to do that moving forward because that was based on some compression from the state. Right now, we're set to look at less than a penny decrease because we are at the floor of the M&O side of that. But again, just a reminder that
So
that
to
could
clarify
happen this
something,
year.
you said we approved the $890,000, the one-time payment. If the Vader passes, it would set up the 2% payment on top of that, but that both of those would come out of the Vader, and we would either pay back the fund balance that we've already used to pay it, but the Vader would cover both the 1.7 or whatever.
Yes, it would.
And then some.
Okay.
And Ms. Stewart, just for the record, would you mind reiterating what our M&O tax rate, I believe it was in August of '23 when it was
Yes,
compressed?
it went down. It was compressed, and the tax rate on the M&O side was lowered just over 18.5 pennies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, we're not alone looking at Vaders this year. There are surrounding districts talking about the same thing. Almost every district.
Already passed theirs.
Right.
I mean, every day when we get our TASA newsletter, there's another district in there that's talking about doing the efficiency audit to do a Vader. Yes.
Right. The official calls won't come until August, but there's a lot of districts talking about it.
It's truly asking for community support
Yes.
for our educators.
And when we were going through the bond process in the spring, we had community members at our different meetings, Bistro Club, different places asking, can we do that on the M&O side for salaries? Because we were having the budget conversations at the same time. So we were hearing that from some of our community members about the pennies on the M&O side to help, support teachers and pay compensation increases. Okay, so another resolution to consider, Mr. Secretary.
All right.
He may need water.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion to approve action item 10C as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. McDavid, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? My codependency, I'll read it if you want me to.
Would you like to?
I said I will if you're not strong enough to do it. Here we go.
You know what? Thank you, sir.
That's
I
right.
could do
you're
it
welcome.
page by page.
All right. We're gonna popcorn. I'm just kidding. All right. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of Argyle Independent School District, whereas the Board of Trustees Board of the Argyle Independent School District is authorized by Texas Education Code 11.151 to govern and oversee the management of the public schools in the district, and whereas the board pursuant to Texas Education Code 11.1511B7, and in addition to the powers and duties under section 11.151 or other law, has the power and duty to adopt an annual budget for the district as required under section 44.004, and whereas the board, through its employment policies, may specify the terms of district employment or delegate to the superintendent the authority to determine the terms of employment with the district as authorized by Texas Education Code 11.1513C, and whereas the board is authorized by Texas Education Code 45.105 to expend funds of the district for purposes necessary in the conduct of the public schools as determined by the board, and oh man, I just lost it. Whereas the board may call for a voter-approved tax ratification election, Vader, on November 5th, 2024, to assist in formulating a budget and meeting the financial burden of a fast-growth district, and whereas the board wishes to recognize employees by establishing an alternate compensation plan for the district in the event the Vader passes for employees based on the attached schedule provided by the administration, and whereas the public purpose for this salary increase is to promote staff morale, show appreciation, and to properly reward employees for performing under the additional hardships caused by lack of funding provided by the state of Texas. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Argyle Independent School District, resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Argyle Independent School District should the Vader pass, authorizes the administration to use the alternate compensation plan as provided for in the 2024-2025 budget based on the attached schedule for all employees. Resolved, the board, should the Vader pass, authorizes and directs the administration to implement the alternate compensation plan on a retroactive basis, beginning with each employee's first working day for the 2024-2025 school year based on the attached schedule for all employees. Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby, 1, determines that these payments serve a public purpose. 2, retains sufficient control over the expenditures to ensure a public purpose is served. And 3, is confident the district will receive a return benefit. Resolved, this resolution only applies if the Vader passes on November 5th, 2024. This resolution does not establish ongoing policy, and the Argyle Independent School District is under no obligation to provide any additional payments beyond those contemplated by this resolution. Passed and approved on this day, the 17th of June, 2024, by the Board of Trustees for the Argyle Independent School District.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for leading the way.
Do you guys want to sit next to each other?
Yeah, just back out.
This is our annual supplemental pay schedule. Brought this to you last month as information only. It's remained the same. Didn't hear any feedback from anybody, so it's up for your vote tonight as an action item.
I entertain a motion to approve action item 10B as presented.
So moved.
Mrs. Artho, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Mr. McDowell, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You enjoyed your time sitting there?
I did. I think I whispered over there. I should have just stood up there. Okay, we talked about this last month. These are our Region 11 contracts. We join these every year. We do review them to make sure they're still relevant to us and they're still something that we use. Most of the contracts are, the cost basis for them are, number of campuses, number of staff, number of students, or within a range of something. And so the contracts do go up a little bit each year based on that. And the total cost for 24-25 is $152,320.62. This is accounted for in our budgeting process, as we do every year for these contracts. They range anywhere from our financial software that we use to our professional development training on the curriculum and staff and curriculum side. There's also some technology services in there. There's the benefits cooperative. Several different things in there if anybody had any specific questions.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the Region 11 contracts as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Slayton, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
And Dr. McDade with the second. You're close.
It's close.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you just want to go to G, or? I mean, go ahead, you're here. We're gonna skip to G, we'll go back to Mr. Cohen.
Well, G, yes, sorry.
Do we need to go to Mr. Cohen first to go to G?
It's fine.
Okay.
Either way.
All right.
This is a budget amendment that we discussed last month. As we talked about, I think every month since school started last August, that our student enrollment was under what our demographer projected. Now, we grew throughout the year, but our average daily attendance was less than what was budgeted. So this amendment takes that into account. It also looks at our tax collections. There was a lot of changes based on the second special legislative session that were implemented in November, and so a lot of those dollar amounts were reduced beyond the original budget. Some of those offset, of course, dollar for the state. We also updated all of our student population indicators in our summary of finance, estimating revenue. And then we looked at band instruments. We looked at positions that weren't filled. What could we do to, what areas could we go ahead and take back funds and needed to move around some different things and different functions. All of this increases our current deficit by $154,500. I think I mentioned last month that I was extremely excited that it wasn't more than that. When we first started talking about this at the beginning of the year with the number of students, I think we started over 200 students short of what the demographer had stated. And so if we had to make a change at that point in time, it was going to be well over $1 million. And so I feel like to come down to we're only 154,000, and I know that sounds bad to say only 154,000 more. It is more of the deficit, but we will end the year in a better spot than where we started. And again, our expenses are coming in well beyond. We talked with our department leaders, our campus principals, early this spring, I think late February, early March, and we were talking to them just like we were you about the budget process and where we were at, and asked them to look at their budgets this year. They have all chipped in and have all said, hey, I don't need this yet. This is something that we can do without. It was a want rather than a need, or we can rearrange some things, use this that costs less. And so they have done tremendous things in this year's budget to bring down those expenditures. And so we're going to finish well under in some areas. And we'll have another amendment in the August meeting for action. We will bring as much as we can to you in July's information, but some of that information will change before we end in August as we get close to the end of the year. So, do you have questions?
Liz, this is the first year that maybe since you've been here that we've come in less than the projected.
That is correct. So our growth, our most recent growth started in around 2014 timeframe. And this would be the very first time that we did not meet or exceed the demographer's projections by the time we started school.
Because when you're typically building the budget, you're building it off of what you would consider a pretty conservative number that we've always exceeded.
That's
And
correct.
So this is new for us.
This is very new. Typically, we're coming back in the spring going, hey, our enrollment was a lot more, our ADA's more, we're going to add some funding to the budget. And that's not what happened this year.
Has the demographer given us any explanation for why?
Not specifically.
We do have a demographers meeting coming up in July.
We do. He will be giving a report at our July 15th meeting.
And one of the things we've talked about internally, we haven't really talked about it with the demographer yet, but we talked about how we did not do the temporary transfers this year, of which we always have. And so
At the elementary school.
Because we thought we were going to be.
Yeah.
And so that's going to account for some of that being under.
And that's correct. Our elementaries were full this year. We just really did not have the space to do that. And so that, makes a significant difference
Because
in where we start the year.
Sitting at 100, almost 100 right now, going into the year.
People that want to enroll
Yes.
that don't have.
That aren't, their
COs.
residency's not set yet, but they have contracts.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10G as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Arthur with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Do you want to do 10? You want to go to H?
H.
All
Yes,
right.
sir. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Jeff, you're getting passed up twice.
He's here till the end anyway, right? Okay, we've talked about a VADER a lot tonight. This is another VADER agenda item. Again, it's not calling the VADER, but as you'll remember in our budget workshops, we talked about there is an efficiency audit that's required, and there's some timelines along with that. In order to consider calling a VADER in August, the board has to have engaged with an auditor for an efficiency audit by July 5th. And so this is our last regularly scheduled meeting before July 5th. And so this is an action item to discuss and ask to engage with our regular auditors for the work on the efficiency audit. It will be dependent on the hours worked on the regular hourly rates. They did give me a range of anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000. So we've listed $20,000 maximum not to exceed. But again, it will depend on how many hours they take to do the work, and how much of the actual research that we can provide to help cut down on those hours. And we're going to do as much as we can to provide that and cut down on the actual hours that are charged.
Yeah, being hopeful that they do our audits annually, and you and your team have a wealth of information that would be on
We
the lower
do,
end of
and
that.
quite a bit of the information for a Vader efficiency audit is pulling information from comparison districts. And all of that information is typically housed on state websites. And so a lot of that data gathering can be done by our staff and then turned over to the auditors for them to actually analyze and complete the efficiency audit.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10H as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Matthew Slayton, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Arthur with the second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
All right, gotta go backwards
Now
to
it's
move
your
forward.
turn.
That's right. Now it's my turn. So for action tonight, this is our construction materials testing inspection services for the stadium and indoor activity center. And this covers all of the code required inspections that have to be done on a construction project. So we've recommended alpha testing, or UES, in the amount of $248,694. And that's not, we don't automatically spend that, in case you're wondering that. We only pay for what they test. So this is based on their estimate of the number of trips for concrete cylinders, number of trips to check densities and so forth.
Is this the budget we had in there?
It's actually less than
That's
what
good.
I had
I like that.
allotted to it.
Good answer.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 10F as presented.
So moved.
Dr. McDade, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hawksworth with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all. Time is 7:58 PM. We are adjourned.